I saw her in July on the lawn in the square. She was lying on her belly, her hair twisted up loosely on her head. I knew it was her, even from a distance. Her chin was slightly lifted. She was propped up on her elbows, reading a book. I stood behind the hedge and observed her over the top of the railings. The delicately defined jawline I had once kissed, the slim pale neck I had once bitten, and the narrow shoulders from which I had once slipped the loose straps of a tiny cotton bra. She was wearing a white sundress with little somethings dotted across the fabric, hearts or flowers. Her shoes lay discarded on the grass. Her bare feet were pointing upwards, ankles crossed. She was eating ice cream. I watched her licking slowly as she turned a page, curling her tongue around the green sphere. I stood hidden behind the bushes. I had momentarily forgotten where it was that I had intended to go. I watched her bite into the ice cream. She was absorbed in her book, and I wondered what she was reading. I was too far away to see the title, partly obscured by her hand. If I had turned and walked away, if I had left her to her book and her ice cream, perhaps without knowing what was to come, I might have been able to continue, to have lived as I had for so long without her. I stood and watched her, unable to move, unable to look away even, for fear she might disappear. I began to feel dizzy in the heat. I knew if I moved closer, her intensity would draw me to her, as it had 5 years ago, when she sat on my sofa without saying a word and waited for me to begin. The gardens were busy. The gated oasis of Brunswick Square provided shelter from the sea breeze. It was the first Saturday of the month and, despite the wind, it was the hottest day of the summer so far. The gardens sloped down towards the front. The jewel blue water glistened under a cloudless sky. As I left my apartment, I saw that the beach was full of sunbathers on bright-coloured towels that had probably left the wardrobe for the first time that year. The gardens were no different. It was mid-afternoon and the remnants of picnics lay amongst the groups of families who had secured a spot for the day. Children played in the shrubbery. Babies sat between their mothers' legs. Fathers drank bottled beer and rolled footballs towards toddlers. Lottie had found a quiet patch of grass close to the trees. She lay in the sun. She finished her ice cream and turned another page. I walked across the lawn. Her eyes never left her book as I approached. It wasn't until I began to cast a shadow over her page that she looked up and blinked. Benjamin. Hello, Lottie. I thought it was you. She sat up slowly, still looking at me, still holding her book open. You're back in Brighton, I said stupidly, because of course she was, and perhaps she had never left. She stared at me. I'm back for the summer. I'm at university. I nodded. The design on her dress was of cherries. She will be 19 now. Still, the years between us remained the same. She looked older, much as I had imagined she would, her features a little more defined, her hair a little longer. It's odd when you carry a picture of someone in your head for so long, thinking of them as they were then, but not always able to see the completed image, only fragments of the whole, a cheekbone, an eyebrow, the dip of a shoulder blade, the curve of a limb. Now, with the complete picture in front of me, Lottie in her dress in the hot July sunshine, her bright open face, her bare feet, her lightly tanned skin, and the swell of her breasts just visible beneath the thin fabric, I felt overwhelmed by her. I wanted to touch her, to pull her against me, to breathe her in and tell her how beautiful she was. I also wanted desperately to move away from her, to turn my back on her and go. Well, that's great, I said. What are you studying? Art history. She eyed me carefully. She seemed pleased to see me, but wary. I thought I detected a coolness, a desire to self-protect. Why didn't you call, her eyes seemed to be saying. I couldn't call, I tried to reply silently. I nodded. Art history. She put her book down on the grass. Richard Yates, The Easter Parade. It's good to see you, she said. And because of that, because of what she offered in that short sentence and in those 5 hopeful words, I said, yes, you too. Perhaps we could go for coffee sometime, now that you're back. I'm free now, if you are, I mean. Yes, I am, I said, a little too quickly. She collected her book, and we walked together across the grass and out of the square. I had a feeling as we walked. Me in my light summer trousers, striped cotton shirt and Panama, Lottie in her dress, carrying just her book and sunglasses. a feeling that this was the second beginning. I say the second, because the first is yet to be told. This second, this moment, walking with her across the square, this is a place from which to start, the place from which I recall the past and plan to document the present, knowing nothing of the future. The seafront is crammed with flesh, shorts, flip-flops, skateboards and shoals of small darting children. We walk silently side by side, manoeuvring our way through the crowds. It's noisy, and anything I think to ask Lottie as we walk sounds contrived, as I find myself rehearsing it first in my mind. Lottie is also quiet, only speaking to ask if I still live in the apartment as we walk past Brunswick Terrace. We choose a cafe at the bottom of Preston Street. I watch Lottie ordering her drink at the counter. I notice she stands now with her shoulders further back. She's an inch or two taller than she was. I'm grateful for the weather. To see her glowing skin, her hair up, revealing her high cheekbones and pretty ears is wonderful. She's both familiar and exotic to me. I stand close to her as I pay. She smells of sun cream. The cafe is cool. I'm glad to be out of the heat and away from the crowds. We sit by the window on a low Chesterfield with a coffee table in front of us. Lottie likes to sit by the window. There's a family at the table next to us. 5 students are huddled together in the corner. Opposite us, a couple in their 60s are eating something brown and lumpy on toast. A tall girl with blonde dreadlocks sits on her own at the back by the counter, writing in a notepad. "What have you got there?" I gesture towards Lottie's glass. "Iced coffee." "You look lovely," I say, and she does. "Thank you." She lowers her eyes and fiddles with her straw before scooping up some cream and sucking it off the end. Watching her is painful. I feel dizzy again. Lottie looks out of the window. I take a gulp of my tea. It seems impossible to think that less than half an hour ago I left my apartment, think of nothing in particular, and now here I am, having tea with Lottie. "Are you enjoying your course?" I ask her. "Where are you studying?" "I'm in Leeds." I'm taken aback by this. I wouldn't have expected her to have gone any further than London. I wouldn't have thought Fiona would have wanted her to be so far away. Perhaps Lottie felt she needed to get away, from Brighton, from Fiona, from me. I ask her about her course, about Leeds. She tells me whom she shares a kitchen with, about her weekend job in the department store, about being back home and a family barbecue she recently had to endure. "Do you ever think of me?" she asks. "Of course I do. It is not every day I treat a patient as complex and beautiful as you." She smiles. "It's only you who thinks I'm beautiful. I'm sure you are not short of admirers in Leeds." She doesn't answer, just looks up at me in that perplexing way she has. Most people I am able to read like a book. Years of treating patients, examining the subtext concealed in every syllable, has given me the ability to detect meaning in the smallest expression. It bothers me that I can't always read her. "How are you, Lottie?" I add milk to my tea. She fiddles with her sunglasses. "Better. I have a few friends from my course." She takes a sip of her drink. "Are you seeing friends from school over the summer?" "I haven't made any plans." "Well, if you're stuck, if you ever want to do something, I'm around between appointments and I don't work Sundays. I'm surprised at my own forwardness." "I know." Lottie looks curiously at me. "It would be nice to catch up properly, only if you have the time, of course." "Do you still come here?" she asks, sucking liquid through her straw. "No, not often." "We used to come here." "Yes, when you finished school." She smiles and looks down at her drink. We sit in silence for a moment, tuning into the conversations taking place around us. I sip my tea. I wish I had something to tell her, something to make her laugh. I want Lottie to be happy. I want to tell her that I understand, that it's okay for her to hate me, that if she suffered, if I hurt her, that I have paid, that I have thought of her every day, and that I have suffered too. The old man opposite us finishes his toast. His wife is talking incessantly. He nods without really listening. When I look up again, I catch him watching us. "I used to like it when we met," Lottie says, breaking the silence. "It gave me something to look forward to." I used to wait for Lottie in a cafe, sometimes this one. I would buy her a cup of tea or a hot chocolate when she arrived. We would then spend an hour together before she would leave to catch the bus to Hove. Fiona was never home from work until after 7. Lottie was never missed. "It seems like such a long time ago." She looks down at the table. "It was a difficult time for you," I say. Her fingers grip the base of the glass. I want to wrap her in my arms, take her to my apartment and sit with her on the sofa. I want to kiss her warm, wet mouth, feel the heat of her skin against mine. "Are you very busy at the moment?" She speaks politely, and it pains me. as if I'm nothing more than an old acquaintance. I am, I say. 2 new clients already this month. One's a referral. That's good. She looks around. I'm quite hungry. I think I'll go and get a slice of cake. Didn't you just have an ice cream? Oh, never mind. She stands and smiles at me. Do you want something? Not to eat, thank you. I watch Lottie at the counter. I think that she must be bored at home, the whole of the summer looming ahead of her. I imagine she's feeling the constraints of her mother's house after the freedom she'll have experienced in her first year away from home. I wonder if she might want to see me again. She quickly returns with a slice of carrot cake. You can have some if you like. She holds the fork out towards me. No, I'm fine, thank you. It's a busy time to be back in Brighton, I say. She pops a large piece of cake into her mouth. She chews for a minute. How's your mum? I ask. She's okay. I think she's seeing someone. Not that she said anything. Maybe she was waiting until I went away. Well, how do you feel about that? We're not in a session, Ben. Lottie manoeuvres her bare legs against the cracked, sticky leather. I was only asking. She picks a walnut off the top of the cake and puts it on the side of her plate. I want Mum to be happy, she says. It's been a long time. She's thinking of selling the house. I think of the family home at the top of the hill in Hove with its sweeping drive. I remember the newly built barbecue Lottie told me her mother had furiously scrubbed one hot summer's day not long after the accident. The meat and salad she had driven out to the supermarket for. Fiona had made Lottie sit down with and eat with her. We can still be a family, Lottie. There's no reason not to still be a family, she had said, as they sat at the patio table eating burnt lamb. I think of the bedroom door that she told me always remained closed, the sheets not washed. Lottie used to creep in to see if her mother had been sleeping in the room again. I think of the photographs still hanging on the walls, the one in the living room above the fireplace, the last and most recent. A school photograph of a smiling bobbed brunette in a primary school jumper. She sits in the evenings and just looks at it, I recall Lottie telling me. She'd drink a whole bottle of wine on her own and just stare at it. I guess it's quite big for her, the house, especially on her own. It won't be easy for her, lots of memories, I say carefully. It's not that easy for me either. Lottie finishes the cake. Well, of course not, I wasn't implying it. It will be hard for both of you. Lottie's phone beeps and she rummages around in her bag for it. Whatever is on the screen makes her smile. Sorry, she says, quickly tapping the keys with her fingertips. Won't be a sec, it's a friend from my course. He's home from the summer too. Devon, he's bored. I nod. I wonder if she means her friend is called Devon or if that's where he is. I feel suddenly jealous of him for receiving Lottie's attention. I glance at her bare legs and watch her foot circling at the ankle under the table as she texts. Do you have a boyfriend? I ask, as Lottie puts the phone back in her bag. Well, there was someone for a while. I'm not sure you should be here with me if you have a boyfriend. Well, I haven't now. A smile forms at the corners of my mouth, which I hide with a phantom gulp of tea. Lottie moves closer to me on the sofa, her bare leg almost touching my trousers. Let's go for a walk, she says, retreating sideways across the leather. Where would you like to go? Let's walk on the pier. I haven't been on the pier since I got back. Well, I haven't been on the pier for years. Are you sure it will be crowded? I don't mind, she says. So we leave our corner of the coffee shop and find ourselves under blistering sunlight in weekend crowds. The sickly smells of hot donuts and candy floss greet us at the entrance to the pier. Pop music blares from a loudspeaker. The pier becomes quieter as we walk. Pale bodies in striped deck chairs line the wooden boards. A cafe serving fish and chips and afternoon tea plays a more traditional melody that loses its words to the wind as we walk by. Lottie and I stroll side by side. She stops and leans over the railings. The sea swirls beneath us. Gulls sweep from sea to cliff and back again. We watch the waves crashing against the frame of the pier. Looking back, we see the city, the giant wheels slowly turning, Brighton's front with its curved and irregular architecture, clotted cream and milky white, tall town houses as elegant as the day they were erected. Have you really not been on here for years? Lottie asks, grabbing the railing. No, I find it busy and unpleasant. The amusements have never interested me. A light breeze lifts her hair. I have the urge to brush a strand from her face and tuck it behind her ear. She stands facing me, beautiful green eyes, the colour of the sea. Her chin is lifted towards me. Her naked shoulders have caught the sun. She sweeps a strand of hair away from her face. The view's nice, though, she says, looking back towards the front. It is, I say, not turning away from her. She smiles and gazes somewhere far away. I breathe in the air infused with salt and the faint smell of Chinese food. I look towards Rottingdean, at the white cliffs and the flat grass. We can see your old school from here. Yes, she says, staring at it as if she's never seen it before. She sighs and turns away. Let's walk back. She seems suddenly tired of the crowds, weary as if the day has already been too much for her. I am reminded of her fragility and of how quickly her mood can change. Our meeting has probably given her plenty to think about. I can't quite believe it myself. We part outside the Queen's Hotel. She turns to look at me, her small features scrunched up in the sunlight. She shields her eyes, using her hand as a visor. Thank you for the coffee. You should come up sometime, I say. We can watch a film or sit together and talk. We never finished watching Brief Encounter. If you want to get in touch, I still have the same telephone number, my mobile and the landline. Sure, I've got them both. She pauses for a second, then leans in and kisses my cheek. She turns and walks away, her back to the sea. I am left amongst the crowds with a trace of a kiss that felt, for some reason, like a slap. I wonder if it would have been better if she hadn't bothered at all. My last words to her echo in my head as I walk, sit together and talk. I pass the Grand and the Metropole. A young porter catches my eye and quickly looks away. A waitress is leaning against an open kitchen door. She's smoking a cigarette. Her short, tight skirt shows the shape of her round bottom. She adjusts her white blouse, pulling up a wayward bra strap. She stubs her cigarette out on the wall. She looks at me, and I look away. Thank you.